Let's kick off with Colby plus Scott, the Yamamoto neoprene wetsuits. I'm rocking the all black 4-3 chest sip. You can get it for $305 for Yamamoto wetsuits.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's wintertime, I think, and I called a friend the other day. I believe this is the coldest water temperature in Southern California's history. Now, that's kind of a bold claim, and I don't have any data to back that up other than my 40 plus years of surfing out here. And it's chilly, man. And plus, the air temperature's chilly. You have to have three things: complete total warmth, a buttery smooth fit, and stretchability. And the technology involved in the Yamamoto rubber that is Colby Plus, it's incredible. It's a no-brainer. Colby Plus full suits, and I have the three too. And I love my suit. It's just you know what it is. It's a pleasure to get into.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Great fit, warm, doesn't leak. What else do you want? And it's inexpensive. The other thing that I noticed on their website, I know you don't wear booties, but they've got a couple of they've got a 2 millimeter liquid seal boot and a 6 millimeter, and they're discounted right now for some reason, $32.50 for a pair of
Oh,
booties.
jeez.
It's about half price. So
Yeah.
if you need booties for the wintertime, go grab those at colbyplus.com. And then, of course, Real Water Sports is always with us. Um, I was on their website recently and I'd never seen this surfboard before, but Lost has a model called the Pisces. It's kind of a high performance, fishy type outline. But Cory Lopez, they did a surfboard review with Trip interviewing Cory Lopez and Cory ripping in the Outer Banks. I gotta say, Cory Lopez has aged unbelievably gracefully. He never gets mentioned. He doesn't get the credit he deserves, but he's like still the same weight that he was in his prime, and he surfs pretty much as good.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said for living a healthy lifestyle, and surfing does that for us. And Corey and a bunch of other people, you and I included, are examples of that. Everywhere you look, when you're in the parking lots of these surf spots, you just see healthy people. There's not a lot of overweight people. I don't know how we got onto this topic. This is real water sports we're talking about.
It
You know
it's
what?
true.
Trip is in great shape too.
Surfing all the time will help, but Cory, you're right. Weight. You said overweight, and then you stopped yourself. But Cory, staying thin is 90% of the battle because then you are able to do the things that you want to actually do. And then that stuff, of course, keeps you healthy once you're doing the thing, keeps the blood flowing, all that sort of stuff. Anyways, Cory Lopez, I have no idea what age he is. He's got to be late 40s, surfing like a 25-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So,
amazing. When you get older, I just remember being like 35 and going, yeah, 35 is the new 25. And then being 45 and being like, yeah, 40, I'm surfing like I'm 35. And then being 55 and going, I think I'm surfing like I'm 45. And then as you get older, you're like, nah, you know what? I'm not getting up quite as quick as I once was.
yep, it is the reality. But if you want to see Cory Rip in old age, go check out the Lost Pisces review video. And again, Real Water Sports does this is something they've been committed to and consistent about for years is new boards that come into inventory do a very thorough review, if not with the pro surfer, often with a shaper. And I just find them really a great resource and entertaining. So
And I'll tell you this, there's a couple of brands, there's a couple of shapers or surfboard brands, if you will, that I've never had a bad board from. And granted, I've
totally.
only had probably four, 3 or 4 or 5 losts, but I've never had a bad board from Matt. And there's a couple of others, Channel Islands. I've never, I mean, you go into the rack and Channel Islands is another board brand that I've never had a bad board from. But, a board where you get on it and you're like, okay, I know exactly where I'm at on this thing. It like the rocker feels right or what for whatever reason. And Lost is one of those brands where I'm just, like I said, never a bad board. And I know that sounds uh, like hyperbole, but for me, it's not. Again, I've only had 4 or 5 of them, but they've all worked incredible.
I've had that exact same experience with those two brands. So
Yeah.
I second it. And you can get them both, Channel Islands and Lost, available at realwatersports.com.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing.
Yeah, a guy. Yeah, guy. David. Yeah, friggin' guy. Yeah, guy. Okay, yeah, we'll say it. This is Spit, the Spit podcast. We talk all things surf. It's Friday. It's Wednesday, February 5th, and it is Super Bowl week. The Super Bowl is this weekend. David, good morning. Welcome. It's good to see you this morning.
Great to be back, Scott.
Yeah. Are you a Super Bowl? Are you a football guy? I know you that you're not a sports guy in that sense.
Not really. I played actually football up until like 10th grade in high school and really, really loved playing. And at that time, I was watching it too. Played cornerback, played safety, was fast, kind of tall, I could jump high. Um, but, but once I quit, I think once surfing really took hold, I was like, I'm done. Not only done playing football, I'm done watching football. And so, no, the answer is I do not really watch.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's Super
Do you
Bowl.
keep up with it?
I do. I have a fantasy football league that I'm in, and my family, my brothers, my son, my daughter, a lot of my surfing friends are in a fantasy football league with me, so I'm kind of into it.
I see the appeal because this time of year, I end up at a Super Bowl party and everybody's into it and there's a whole like it's a ritualistic community that I see the fun in it for sure.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think yeah, playing games like fantasy or gambling or they set up that big board with squares on it and you bet on things like that all gets you invested in the game.
Yeah.
Who are you rooting for?
I'm rooting for the Eagles because I'm a Charger fan, which means, David, and you might not know this, but that Kansas City is in the Chargers division. So I hate watch the Kansas City Chiefs.
Gotcha.
Much like I hate watch the Dodgers because I'm a Padres fan. So I hate watch, and so I'm rooting for the Eagles. And I too I played high school in my freshman year, and I broke my finger. You can see the little gap there. I broke this finger, um, and never played football again. I remember that was really when all things veered towards surfing, ninth grade.
Yep, sounds about right. What position did you play?
I was like an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman. I was like this where they put the non-skilled players, I guess you could say. I wasn't
Um,
fast. Let's put it this way. I was not fast.
Did you ever see that Jerry Seinfeld bit about when you're really hardcore into sports, you're really just rooting for a uniform?
Oh yeah.
Like that's
That's
all it
funny.
comes down to. And it's based on where you live. So like you're in San Diego and you're like, I love the Padres uniform because if there's a player and you're like, this guy's the greatest player of all time on the Padres. Like, we love this guy. But if he goes and plays for an opposing team later, you hate that guy. So the only thing that you're really voting for is the cotton material that is on the person's back. So it's like the most devout people who are like dedicate their lives and all their money and resources towards this thing are worshiping clothing, essentially, at the end of the day.
That is true on a big portion of the equation there, but there's also a sense of community, right? Like the sense that you're rooting for the team, the location, the city, um, which, by the way, takes the Chargers out because they moved to Los Angeles. But I mean, when you're a kid, and that's really part of it too. It's kind of like there's an emotional attachment. Like I went to Charger games when I was 12 years old. Like my dad had season tickets. We went to Jack Murphy Stadium. So that's been ingrained in me is what I'm getting at. Like,
Yeah,
and so I've, if you're going to have a team, it's the team that you were a fan of when you were a child.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm not downplaying the importance of it.
No,
I'm
but
just
it's great what you
Seinfeld made a
said.
good point.
It's wonderful that like you really broke out. You pulled the emotion out of it and you're like, you're rooting for cotton,
Exactly.
maybe polyester. Who knows what it's made of?
Exactly. Hey, do you want to come over here real quick?
Is that
You,
Austin?
yeah, Austin's here.
Hi,
Austin,
Austin.
do you remember my friend Scott?
Hmm.
That's Scott
Yeah.
right there. Hey, lift up your face so he can see you.
There you
Austin
are.
just
Good.
woke up.
Yeah. Good morning, buddy. How you doing? Are you going to have some morning food, breakfast?
Yeah, but he can't hear you because I've got my headphones on.
Oh,
So,
hi,
anyways,
Austin.
I'm
Yeah.
working. So, can you go with mommy, please? She'll get you breakfast. Thank you. Anyways,
All right. Look at him. What is
he's
he?
got to make an
3?
appearance every. Yeah, he's 3 and like 3. He turned 3 in October, so a little over 3. Um, it's good if he makes an appearance every once in a while so you could track his growth.
Yes, exactly right.
Anyways, Super Bowl.
His
I'm a fan of.
growth and the gray on your beard, we're going to track them together. They're like, they're going up. There's an uptick.
There's a positive correlation between the two.
Thank you.
Well, moving on from Super Bowl, we've got the pipe event started since last time we recorded. You did not watch How Surfers Get Paid last time that we spoke. By the way, speaking of that, Jamie Tierney is the editor for the series, and he reached out to me and he's like, "Hey, are you guys going to talk about it next week?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, I'd love to come on the show and illuminate anything, or Sam would be willing as well. So maybe next week or
I
maybe
would
with the next
love,
episode.
yeah, let's do that. That would be great. I love what they're doing. Obviously, you do too. So yeah, that's a yes. Let's get them involved.
I meant to actually organize that for today and then it just slipped my mind, but we could do it next time or with the next episode that they drop. Either way is fine. Anyways, what in your show notes, where would we be? You'd like to begin?
I think we start with that. How surfers get paid. I don't know the exact episode. I think it's season 2, episode 6.
Correct.
Excuse me. I've been fighting off a little cold here.
Mm.
And it kind of features, basically it's about Craig Anderson and Dane Reynolds. And there's some fascinating numbers that are dropped that you kind of hinted last week about, the amount of money that they left on the table. And there's some really good nuggets in there. It's really good sort of um, behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz type stuff, which we often get with these How Surfers Get Paid. So I guess my first takeaway, and this, I don't know if you grabbed this bit or not, but there's a portion in there, and I forget the guy's name, but he's kind of a ginger Australian guy, and he's a feature in this one. I don't remember his name, but I think he worked for Quiksilver. Do you know who I'm speaking of?
I don't remember his name either, but yes, he was a Quiksilver marketing guy.
Yeah,
And he was
and he's
like responsible for handling Dane and Craig. Essentially, that was his job.
and he's great. He's
Yeah.
great, and I apologize for not knowing his name. I didn't write it down, but he said something, or maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was the guy that was making boards. No, I think it was him. But anyway, let me scratch all that. He said this. He said, young surfers get too small of surfboards and they overpower them. And therefore, they do not understand how to let the wave dictate to them, how to get feeling out of the wave. And he praised Craig Anderson's father for keeping Craig on a longer board. And I thought that was the most telling statement. It is so true that if you keep a kid on a longer board for a longer period of time and don't let him fall to the dictates of his peer group, it's way better for his style. And you really see that in Craig's surfing. And I thought that was perhaps the most prescient statement from this piece, just in my opinion, just specifically about style and kids, and how you can throw a kid on a 4-3 and he just overpowers it. He's just bing, 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 instead of, oh, this is how the wave works. I've got a longer rail in the water. Oh, if I go up here, I'm going to get the speed I need to go back down there. Like there's so much nuance there. Anyway, your thoughts on that one sentence?
It's funny, in my notes, that was the first bullet point that I wrote as well, is Craig's dad kept him on a 7-2. That was what he said. And super important because when you're riding that smaller board, you're getting a lot of movement. Like all that body movement makes the young surfer think they're doing something. They're like, "Oh my God, I turned my board back towards the whitewash. That's a cutback. I've seen so and so do that. Like now I'm actually surfing." But it's not really the end goal is to get wiggly on a surfboard. And so you're exactly right. Going in, finding where the power source is on the wave, the longer board will allow you to tap into that, and it'll force you to go slowly. You can't get your board up into that position. You need to do everything correctly to be there at the right time and to kind of track where the wave's going to be. You have to plan out in advance. And so that was the difference between him and everybody else. And it's reflected in his style to this day, which is another thing that I thought about was how much your initial surf experience stays with you for the rest of your life. And it's so hard to correct or change.
Yeah, that's a fascinating thing that I also agree with you gets overlooked. What we first started out on really has a immense amount of influence over us. And so, and people often go, "Hey, man, I want to learn how to surf," blah blah blah. And I always go, "Here's a skateboard with super soft wheels. Find a mellow hill and just start going down that hill. Just, don't even go in the water. Like if you want to learn to surf, you should probably skateboard." I've always thought that you can tell a guy who learned that rode a skateboard as a kid, you can tell, generally speaking, they're going to be pretty good surfers.
Yeah. The it's fascinating to think like the metaphor is when you're a young human being, those first 5 years are so whatever you learn in those times is going to influence the rest of your life, basically. Those become kind of these core worldview things, you know? And the same is true with your adolescent surf life. When you learn to surf, regardless of what age you are as a human being, those initial kind of experiences are just going to inform the rest of everything that comes. 5 years of the initial, 3 years of your initial surf experience will be with you 40 years from now if you continue to surf.
Yeah, obviously I'm older. I learned on a single fin and it was a blessing, and I remember after about the third year, twin fins came in. It was like 1980. And I got a twin fin after I'd been riding a single fin. And after 3 years as a kid, David, as well as I do, that you kind of figured it out. Like you kind of got it going. You're pretty good. Yeah, it's a single fin, and yeah, it probably did bog. And there was probably better performance options after I had a foundation laid. And I remember getting a twin fin from the same guy who made me the single fin, and just kind of it just it was a big difference, and not
Yeah.
in a good way. And I'm just really grateful that I had time spent on a single fin.
I had the opposite experience. I grew up in the Kelly Slater era and was riding chippy, rockered out thrusters that were too small for me. And the, you know, consequences of those decisions are still with me to this day, unfortunately. I've
I don't know.
often,
I've seen you surf. You surf great. I don't know what are you talking about.
look, I'm comfortable in the water, but I still, any image that I see of myself, I'm like, I am trying way too hard. Like I need to settle down.
That's the other
Um,
thing. Craig Anderson does not look like he tries too hard. Like there's just a real flow to his surfing, and I guess it should be pinned on that 7-2. His
that's
dad, by the
exactly.
way, was kind of a hero, a star of this episode. I thought they couldn't get enough of his dad. Although I did
Uh,
need to put the it felt like I needed to put the captions on a few times with his
I
pretty
watch
thick accent.
I watch everything with captions. I agree with you. I loved his dad, and also it's always funny the way that they stage direct. Like sit in a lawn chair on your sidewalk with your house in the background. Like it's a funny choice, but it also informs me, the watcher, about his whole life. I just see the way his house looks and where he's living, and I'm like, oh, I know a lot about that guy already, just in one
Yeah.
glance, you know.
Yeah, middle class. Well, there only is a middle class, I guess, in Australia, but suburbia a little bit. Where's Craig Anderson from? Which part of Australia do you know?
New South Wales. I forget
Central
exactly though.
Central Coast, maybe.
Yeah, I forget exactly.
Mm.
But so opening clips of Craig Anderson getting barreled, it's
Oh
so
my God.
impressive. It's
Yeah.
so impressive. Like I've forgotten. I mean, he was a huge cultural kind of influence for the mid 2000s, through let's say 2015 or so. And I remember that I was there for that. I paid attention. I loved it, but I've forgotten. You know, I just haven't been exposed to it again for the last 8 years or so. And when you see it, it's mastery. Like it's artistry and it's mastery and it's technically unbelievably proficient, and he can do airs and all that sort of stuff, but also the subtlety is what I think so many other surfers don't have. That element of not looking like he's trying, but he's in an incredibly critical situation.
Yeah, it was at Greenbush. I think that opening sequence. At least that's the stuff that stuck out to me, and it was incredible. And there's a line in there from Belly, and he basically says, "Look, stand there, knee bent, do a bottom turn, soul arch, have long hair. It's not that hard. There's a million Craig Andersons." And at first, I was like, he's kind of right. There are probably a million Craig Andersons, but what the way he surfs is special. He knows how to ride a surfboard, and I also think there's 50 million guys that don't know how to do it like that. There's way more guys that don't surf like Craig Anderson than do surf like Craig Anderson. Your thoughts on Belly sort of dismissing, if you will, Craig Anderson's surfing and just basically saying you can plug and play anybody in that position?
Yes and no. It stuck out to me as well. So there are way fewer. It's easy to pose in that fashion, but Craig isn't just posing. We see a lot of surfers on Instagram who are posing in that way, but they couldn't surf Greenbush, And so Craig being able to take on Greenbush in its most critical, type of wave is impressive, and very few people can do that with the level of style that he has. But to Belly's point, there are still a lot of surfers on the planet who could do that. Where I think the difference comes in is having a brand that comes in and supports that person to see it to its fullest potential. Because there are people who are 20-year-olds who have that raw talent that they fostered just in their local surf. But until somebody's willing to send you around the planet and really test your mettle in all styles of waves, and then you live up to it, and then you grow and become a better surfer through it, and them to then force feed that to us fans so that we, then it becomes culturally influential. That was the difference with Craig Anderson, is somebody invested in him at that point, and Craig was able to take it to a certain level. As you kind of go through the episode and you get to the point where he turns down paychecks, that reveals that he could still actually be doing it at that level for the last 8 or 10 years and maybe have taken it to a whole different level. And instead, he opted out after a period of time. But having that confluence of the talent, the style, and then somebody who invests in it, and you take that investment and really make good on it, that's what happened with Craig.
Yeah, and there seems to be another takeaway that I had from it is that there seems to still be a bit of animus or animosity towards Craig from some in the Quiksilver camp, or from some that worked in the Quiksilver camp during Craig's involvement with Quiksilver. There was one mention, I think it was a Mikey Picon, the Frenchman who worked or still does work, I'm not sure, at Quiksilver at the time. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he basically says, we created Craig Anderson. Quiksilver created Craig Anderson. It wasn't the other way around. Craig Anderson didn't create himself. Without Quiksilver, Craig Anderson wouldn't be where he is today. We sent him around the world. We were the first ones in. And while that statement may or may not be true, what I noted more than anything was the amount of, I guess there was a bit of almost resentment
From Mickey towards Craig.
Yeah, from the Quiksilver camp in general, but
I
for
didn't I
sure
didn't
from
sense
Mickey.
that. I didn't sense that necessarily, but what was the resentment about? That Craig turned down their offer in the end and
I
seemed
think so.
unappreciative?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah,
That's interesting. Um, I think that Mickey might be overvaluing his contribution, because he also stated that Craig didn't want to wear Quicksilver's clothing and he looked awkward in it. So instead, he would wear thrift store clothing and maybe like a small logoed, the tee that's a plain black tee and it has like a Quicksilver logo stitched on really small on the pocket. Like that's all he would wear. But the reality, so that means that's Craig's style. And when they finally embraced that style and let them go a little bit rogue with the art direction of the marketing, that's what was influential. So it was Quicksilver allowing Craig to be Craig and not forcing him to be the Jeremy Flores, model. So I think that it's a partnership, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And I think in a lot of partnerships, people overvalue their own contributions to the partnership, and they'd be wise to kind of have some humility probably and
yeah.
appreciate the other person.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And what you mentioned made me think of that one scene in this episode where they're talking about somebody says, who's gonna let Dane Reynolds just scribble a bunch of like pencil stick figures and put it on a t-shirt and go sell it? Like did does anybody still own that stuff? Like was there ever
I
is there still like almost a tongue-in-cheek. First of all, was that tongue in cheek, or was that really his art, or was he just kind of making a statement? And secondly, is there a place in the market for stuff like that, like just stick
yeah,
figures? It was almost
great.
like Trash Boy. It was almost like his son could have done better art.
I agree with you. The art was terrible. I had a little gig with Quiksilver during that time, and that brand was called Summer Teeth. And so I did collect some of the Summer Teeth stuff, and
Really?
I still have it. Yeah, I have it stashed
Wow.
somewhere. Like I never wore it. It's not my style, but at the time I was like, I want to support Dane. Um, and so I got some t-shirts, I think, and then just kind of put them in a drawer and never really wore them, never looked at them again, but I'm sure I still have them.
We need to, you know what? We should put those in the California Gold Surf auction. I mean, how many of those are still around?
Very few.
Although Quicksilver might be sitting on a huge box in some warehouse somewhere.
Yeah. I remember I also got one of it was only like circulated for staffers, but it was Kelly Slater when he won his 11th, flipping off the camera with two middle fingers. So the two middle fingers are 11s,
Yeah.
and it was like that was the shirt to promote his 11th world title amongst the crew.
Oh, very cool.
So I've got that too somewhere, but little relics of a moment in time for Quicksilver. Um, but so let's get into the numbers now. And the idea of they were both had a little bit of disdain for one another because you just gave Mikey's side, or Mickey's side, but also Craig and Dane seem to be seething about the corporate infrastructure at Quicksilver as if they seem to be pretty naive about the
They're
way this
naive.
works.
They're completely naive.
They were young guys getting paid millions of dollars, and they were resentful about the person writing their checks because there was a corporate infrastructure. I think they thought like, oh, it's Bob McKnight and a couple other people at the brand and a couple of pro surfers that I get to hang out with, and the money shows up. Nope. It's a network of distribution that's global.
It's a
And
business.
and the only way you're getting paid this amount of money is if you have legions of workers supporting you to get here. You should thank your lucky stars, right? And they were clueless about any of that and seemed really miffed that there was middle management that seemed to change out every 6 months, and like, hey, my friends aren't here anymore. What the hell? I don't want to be a part of this brand. And so
Yeah.
they basically, to give you the numbers, I think Craig was being paid $350,000 US a year for 5 years. Um, he walked away when he was ready to leave, or yeah, I guess when he was ready to leave, they got an inkling, and so they offered him $500,000 a year, $500,000 a year for the next 5 years. He turned that down. Dane, on the other hand, was offered $1.2 million for 5 years at the same time, which would have been $8 million in revenue for 5 years. And he turned down $1.2 million a year.
Couple things. First of all, I think by that time Dane had already amassed a pretty good number of millions of dollars from Quicksilver, and so I think the Craig Anderson thing was a little bit more surprising. They're both incredibly, like there's a lot of money on the table, right? 10.5 million between the two of them, 8 for Dane and 2.5 for Craig. But like I said, um, I think that Dane at least felt like he had a little bit of leverage. He's like, I'm doing good either way. I can walk and still be healthy fiscally. And so the Craig Anderson thing, what I also noted was that he came to America, hang out with Dane, blah, 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 eventually found his way into Wasserman, probably was managed by Blair Marlin. And they're like, dude, we're going to get you a number. And they worked their asses off, got him this number. And he goes, nope, I don't want it. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that that was frustrating as all get out for the people at Wasserman. But
I mean,
I think that's how it happened. And maybe I'm getting that wrong. And if I am, I apologize. But that's kind of what I took from it.
um, Do you or did you get the sense that they regret their decisions to walk away?
Um, it depends what year you ask them. You know, I think right when Former was really floundering, they were probably going, "Oh my God, what did we do?" You know, I sense now that they're comfortable with it. It feels as if the last statement from his dad at the end of at the end of this segment. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
His dad basically said, "Look, regarding the 2.5 million that Craig walked away from, um, where we're at now, he's on the plus side of that. Like and I'm putting words into his mouth, but it was more or less, we're good. We're made whole on the 2.5 million."
Okay.
And so I found that to be kind of interesting. Like, so my point is, if you would have asked him earlier, he'd probably be like, "Yeah, I blew it." And there was some discussion about, oh, they finally realized that now that they have to actually work and place orders and do all the nightmare stuff that you have to do for product fulfillment and customer service, that this is basically what all those guys that they didn't like at Quiksilver were doing. They were just trying to get the stuff out there to the people. And so I think there was, like you say, there was some naivete that turned into, oh shoot, you know, like now I understand.
It sounds like a healthy human emotional arc to go through. Nobody had a crystal ball at the time. Nobody knew that that was end times for the surf industry and that those paychecks were actually the highest that anybody would ever get paid as professional surfer. They just thought, we're crushing it. We're always going to crush it. And they're offering 1.2. We can go do this on our own. And, they're paying us 1.2 because they're making 10 mil. So let's go make the 10 mil ourselves and keep it all ourselves. They made that leap and were woefully wrong. But you would, in that period of time, have a certain amount of animus towards the person or the company. And over time, you should get over it because the reality is you were incredibly lucky and gifted to have this opportunity at the time. And if you don't see the value in that and appreciation for it, you're going to live the rest of your life angry and pissed. And that's not healthy. So I think they came around.
Yeah. It, to be fair too, like during that time, and you know this, during that time at Quicksilver, there was a lot of turnover. It was like a really tumultuous time. Quicksilver, the stock, everything was taking a dive. And it did seem like each and every year they either got a new CEO or they restructured this guy and they bought Solomon and Callaway Golf and some other stupid stuff. And the stock was diving. And I'm sure board of directors meetings are like, "You're out. Let's put him in and get this ship straightened out." And so there was a ton of turnover, almost, I think, each and every year at Quicksilver regarding sort of, the people that ran the ship.
Yeah, I understand that is tumultuous if you're an employee there. I wonder too, is there a way for those guys in that moment to take the paycheck and still maintain their core beliefs? Because I think once they ascended to the level of influence that they did because of those core beliefs and their, you know, let's say anti-establishment, whatever, youthful attitude. And the style of clothing that they wore was a reflection of not caring, essentially. So once they actually understand what's going on behind the curtain, is there a way to continue to engage in that partnership and pretend like you're still carefree, you know what I mean? And just collect the paycheck. Or, I mean, there's probably a ton of examples of people who have done that to where us as the viewers feel like, oh man, they're just, they lost their core credentials or
I don't
it
know. Like
feels,
I think about Michael Jordan. Like that's the thing, is that at the end of the day, these guys still rip waves with a style and abandon that's just impressive. And so, I mean, how many times did you watch like Kolohe or somebody with that Nike 6.0 swoosh and go, "Yeah, he's not shredding as good because he rides for Nike"? Never. And Michael Jordan riding for Nike, not riding, but being sponsored by Nike. You never went, "Oh yeah, now I'm not into Michael Jordan because he's wearing Nike." Like we just don't do that with athletes. Like their prowess within their field is so high that it doesn't matter. They're, like they could wear
yeah.
whatever. And so I do sense that, there was this whole Volcom anti-establishment, youth against the establishment, and then they sold and left and just went, thanks a lot. Just kidding about the anti-establishment thing. And so I do think there was sort of some underpinnings or some undercurrents, if you will, of, oh, we got to be careful about the corporate sellout thing, but nobody really cares. And by the way, that's what each and every one of these brands today is trying to do. There's not a brand out there that isn't trying to build itself up to a place where they can cash out. That's
Yeah.
that's what we do in America. That's called success.
Yeah. That, by the way, Chaz had a pretty solid headline on Beach Grit this week where it said, the establishment wins. Volcom files bankruptcy and closes all stores.
Did they? Did they really?
Yeah, well, Liberated Brands, who's like
Oh,
the
Liberated. Yeah,
licensing,
right,
yeah,
right.
Liberated Brands filed bankruptcy,
Yeah.
and they're the license holder for Volcom, and they are shuttering all stores in America, and I think Billabong as well, and a couple of others. But the headline being "The establishment wins" is a great callback.
That is. But I mean, look, Richard Wolcott and that whole crew, Troy and those guys. I know there was quite a few other guys that did really well, and I tip my tip of the cap to those guys. But if you're, to any young kid that's 18 years old that thinks, oh, this brand is core because it's, at the end of the day, those guys that built that brand that are in the middle of it right now, trying to build that brand up, are looking to get out, and they should, like that's what it's all about. Get out. Build a
Well,
business and get out.
yeah, and I mean, I'm not giving advice here, but when those liquidation sales happen that are currently happening with those brands, um, product is available for dirt cheap. And by the way, look at the debtors or the creditors that Liberated Brands owes money to, and they're all in China, Chinese manufacturers, basically. So all of this, Chinese manufactured product that's branded with a brand that you think you believe in their ethos of or whatever, that is now available for dirt cheap. If you want to go spend your money on that and support that, that is what it is. But there's still great core brands, the Florences of the world, the Rourkes of the world, the Birdwells, the Catons, that are still like locally run by surfers, sponsoring surfers, putting surf films out, all that kind of stuff that I think your money would be better spent on.
I mean, look, I guess the question is the Florences of the world, the Salty Crews of the world, these young brands that are absolutely core in the sense that they're owned by hardcore surfers that we all know. Um, don't you think that there's a moment when they're like, okay, we built this brand to a place that it's incredible. It seems appropriate for us and our families to cash out, sell the brand, and move on. And I would say, yeah, it's going to happen. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just, in fact, I'm in favor of that. I'm stoked when that happens. Good for them. Um,
Yeah, I think so. I know a number of people at those brands, and I've had conversations with them about this stuff, and a lot of them have turned down those offers
I
in
don't
these.
think the brand's even there yet. I'm talking when the brand gets to a place that
Well,
they're
so,
huge, not,
so
like Quiksilver huge, like Hurley huge.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. What I'm saying is, in these nascent years, some of those offers still come along and they turn them down because right now, in these individuals' working years, they want to work on something that they love and that
Yeah.
they feel passionate about. And they're in a position where it's actually working. Like we have all this life experience from previous brands that did sell out. And now we're doing this little core thing. And guess what? We can have a good lifestyle with a core business. It doesn't need to be $100 million company. It can be a much smaller company, but it's servicing a community that we appreciate and respect and love and are a part of. And so let's just do that and live a happy life and be proud of our product and proud of our work. But you're right. There does seem to come a time for all of us in our life where we want to retire. Like, okay, well, we loved that for a long time and now we're done with that. And so if you have an opportunity to make an exit and collect a paycheck that'll help not only you live out the rest of your life, but maybe help your kids and your kids' kids, yeah, you'd be foolish not to
Well,
do that.
Florence is actually an interesting brand, right? Because you actually do have guys that already cashed out. So they're like, cool, we're sitting on a chunk of money, and now we can actually do it and not be stressed about getting to that place where we can then sell. Like Bob and Pat and John's probably killing it. Nate, like for sure, some of the investors are at that place where they're in a brilliant place because they can actually do what they love, which is, create this incredible brand around this really authentic group of people, and continue to do it and not be in that thing where it's like, okay, we're going to build it up to this number and then boom, we're out, because they already did that. So that maybe isn't the best example, but, and good for them, by the way. That's an even better place to be in such a comfortable place that you can really focus on the things that you love about the lifestyle that you've lived your entire life.
Totally. I mean, if you still have working years left and you're passionate and driven, phenomenal use of your time,
Yeah.
because there's a
Yeah.
lot of other people who are just like partying on the beach somewhere, getting drunk every night, with the resource. Um, the one of the best stories, or whatever, maybe not the best story, but Maurice Cole was in the comments section, and he mentioned, he goes, what the best investment ever was Danny Kwok, early days of Quiksilver. Richie Wolcott was leaving Quiksilver and wanted to start Volcom, and Danny Kwok let him borrow or invested $7,500 in the startup of Volcom. It was worth this many shares, and he wrote out the number of shares. I forget what the number was, but those shares ultimately Kwok was able to cash out when Volcom went public, and the amount was rumored to be $80 million. So a $7,500 investment in Volcom seed money turned into 80 million on the flip.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for him. Danny did well on a bunch of different levels at different places. So I don't think there's any doubting that. And he seems like, I don't know him, but he seems like a wonderful human too, which is really important, obviously.
I got to chat with him quite a bit a couple of months ago. He reached out, and yeah, he's phenomenal.
There's a new
Phenomenal.
documentary out about Lance Collins, and I saw some clips of Danny in it, and pretty cool, man. I'm looking forward actually to watching that movie.
Yeah, me too. Shape of Things, I think is. Oh no,
That's the Dick Brewer.
That's the Dick Brewer one.
Yeah.
It's a Wave Tools documentary about Lance Collins. God, yeah, the
I
name's
think
escaping
I
me.
think the premiere was last night up in Newport. I think at the
Well, they
Lido.
did. No, they did a, maybe it was, but they did a the Newport Film Fest a few months
Oh,
ago.
oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, yeah,
So I don't know if they might have screened it last night too, but it did premiere at the Newport Film Fest and got a bunch of accolades. So,
well, this brings us to I guess, the Hypto Krypto version of this, the last chunk of this episode that we saw, right?
yep.
Let's take a quick break and we'll get right back to it.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, guy. Hey, we're back. I had to get a throat lozenge. Probably
Fair
not going
enough.
to sound too good.
That's all right. So yeah, the Hypto Crypto. Um, I kind of teased this last week, but the big reveal there is that we all associate that board with Craig Anderson, but it's technically not a Craig Anderson model. And it's the greatest selling model of surfboard on the planet other than the Wavestorm. And so Craig has not received any of the proceeds from those sales, basically.
Yeah, he seemed a little, he just didn't really want to talk about it too much. I noticed that they said roughly 15,000 cryptos sell each year. I think that's the takeaway I got. And Steve Bell wasn't so sure about that.
Stephen Bell is involved in surfboard manufacturing, for those of you who don't know. He's obviously probably best known as a Quiksilver marketing kind of guru who is a handler for Kelly Slater for decades, actually, and confidant. And so that's what people know him mainly for. But he also is involved in surfboard manufacturing in France, where his home base is. And so that's why he had special insights about that. I don't know. It doesn't seem unreasonable to me. And by the way, the 15,000 a year, what was most remarkable about that is that that's been consistent for 15 years. So the idea that a surfboard model could remain in that pole position for a decade and a half, regardless of trends and styles of surfing and all that, is kind of remarkable.
And, let's be clear, that surfboard has been around forever.
Yeah,
That's just a 1970 single fin, the outline, wide point forward. That's actually taking it back to what we started the show off with. That's what I started surfing on, was a wide point forward, full volumed surfboard. Now, granted, it's probably got some different bottom contours and some stuff that's modern, but um, and frankly, it's a board that a lot of us are riding that we have made by other people.
yeah,
Wide point forward, easy to ride, plenty of volume. It's sort of the perfect COVID board. It allows you to catch waves and rip. And it's the anti sort of 1990s flip nose, chipped out Kelly Slater board. It's the exact opposite of that.
completely. Yeah. What have you ever ridden one?
I actually have.
Really?
I purchased, full disclosure, I purchased a Hypto Krypto because I love the outline's insane. It's got a beautiful outline, and it's because I'm brought towards it. I'm pulled towards it because it's something I relate to, that outline. Well, I've always loved wide point forward surfboards, and I rode it, and I didn't like it, and it had nothing to do with anything that Hayden did or the design. It was the EPS. I
Mm,
don't like EPS foam. It's just too. There's no for me. There's no drive. It's real. It just stays in the water and doesn't want to move down the line. That's the best way I could describe it. Of course, the boards do. EPS is good foam, and I've had good boards with EPS that were a little heavier. But in general, there's a certain amount of I don't know, is it inertia? It just
missing?
it
Inertia
doesn't
missing?
it
Lack
doesn't
of inertia?
lack of inertia. It doesn't. I don't know my
Store
physics
it
phrases very well,
doesn't
but
doesn't store the energy in the same way that PU does, and it kind of has like it's more chattery feeling, but
yeah.
it has
Anyway,
plenty of people who love it. Yeah, so I've never ridden one, but um, I do appreciate what Craig and not Craig, Hayden. I like how Hayden Cox doesn't really seem to care what everybody else is talking about. He's doing his own thing. There's lots of chatter and haters about the way that he's doing his business or whatever. He keeps his head down, keeps delivering, shows up, does the work, and like he just keeps delivering. And so I admire that about him and his style of business and the way he conducts himself.
yeah, there's a bit of a tall poppy syndrome in Australia, right? Like, and so he's easy pickings for those that want to fire off salvos, but good for him. He's done great. That
Yeah.
board design, I mean, if I don't like EPS, I'd be wise to take that board and have one of my shapers build me that board with polyester foam.
Well, the other thing is Craig Anderson being miffed about not receiving any of the proceeds of that, the sales of that board. The reality of that is should have had a contract, dude. Like that is only on you. If Hayden is savvy enough, first of all, Hayden is the one investing all of his time and his money to take a gamble on you, making all those boards, giving them to you. So Hayden is out of pocket a lot before he ever sees the benefit of those sales. And those sales may never come lots of the times when you make that investment. So Hayden is taking the risk. And if Craig clearly wasn't as savvy enough businessman, um, that's on him, and I think and it's also, he still made a ton of money and had a great lifestyle for a long time. So there's no need to feel shorthanded when you're doing better than almost everybody else who's come before you in that same position. Craig Anderson and the team at Quiksilver plucked you among the few people who could do what you do, plucked you out to make that investment in you, and you still did benefit from it. So,
Yeah. The concept of what surfer sells the most surfboards is Craig the reason those Hypto Kryptos sell? For sure, I think on some level at the beginning of the Hypto Kryptos life, Craig certainly had a big impact on it. But I think it was Matt Biola, somebody in there said, look, the average Joe that goes into a surf shop and buys a Hypto Krypto probably doesn't know who Craig Anderson is. Like it's almost transcended the Craig Anderson influence. And now it's the Hypto Krypto. And it just is. It's kind of like, I don't know, the Black Beauty for CI. Like, if you're buying a Black Beauty, do you know that was Tom Kern was behind that board? I mean, you and
Oh
I
yeah.
do, of course, but as the average
Yeah.
guy, I don't know.
Well, look, to Biolis's point, you cannot track the influence because it's so woven into the tapestry of surf culture. But that person wouldn't be buying it if it wasn't for Craig Anderson in a different version of that argument. They don't know Craig Anderson's name, but they at some point saw the images of him at Kandui and that stayed with them.
I mean, the interesting question is when you go and if somebody goes into Costco and buys a Jerry Lopez Wavestorm, how many of them are buying it because it's got Jerry Lopez's name on it at Costco?
I,
You're
I,
going there to get a softboard. It just happens to have his name on it. Like you were going to buy one regardless.
I disagree. I think you were going to buy one regardless, and there's two versions there. There's the blue and white, you know, regular standard model, and then there's the Jerry Lopez model. And there's enough awareness out there in the zeitgeist that Jerry Lopez is somebody and something. And so
Yeah.
I'm buying that one rather than the generic one.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
well, anyways, fantastic job, Stab. Love it. Give us more. We will get Jamie or Sam on to discuss
do you think
all of
Jerry
this.
sells more boards than Craig Anderson?
Yeah,
Is
I
Jerry
think,
is Jerry the guy who sells more surfboards than anyone in the world?
yeah, that's a pretty well established fact in the
Oh,
last 5 years or so.
yeah.
The surf industry doesn't have numbers on that, but I have seen like I don't know, business journals or something at some point comment on it, and it far exceeds any
Yeah.
other surfboard model.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
the I wanted to talk about the Pipe Pro. They only
okay.
ran one day of competition last week, or I
Yeah.
guess it would have, yeah. Oh man, it was a week ago now, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of last week.
Yeah.
And it ran in marginal head high conditions at mainly backdoor, some pipe waves as well. They ran all of the men's round one. They ran part of the women's round one. Do you have any thoughts on day one? And did you watch?
I did not watch. I saw one wave. I saw one of Kelly Slater's waves, which was a good little backdoor tube. Um, I don't know. It's unfortunate. It looks like today might be okay.
Okay.
6 to 8 feet, fair to good. But I mean, last week I told you they were going to be running on Tuesday and Monday and Tuesday of this week. So I was off. Of
Yeah, I was
course,
surprised that it was a surprise that it even ran the day that it did run because the day before the forecast looked bad and then showed up that day and it was 8 foot and kind of clean.
yeah, like that's the nature of surfing in Hawaii is like it's just the winds are just very hard to determine.
So
But yeah, it looks like there's a good lineup of swell here as I look at the Surfline forecast and conditions look prime. Friday it's 8 to 10 feet. Today it's supposed to be 6 to 8. Monday
amazing.
it's 8 to 10. When's the last day of the period? Do you know?
I could find out really quickly.
Because
I
it's
think
yeah.
it's soon. I know that. Um, let's see. It is the 8th, February
Oh,
8th. So
oh
3 days.
shit. Well, then it looks like they can run, and it looks like it could be pretty good on Friday, the 7th, 8 to 10 feet.
Okay. Well, they need more than one day to run, so maybe they can end on Friday.
Yeah.
But I'll give you my real quick recap of the day. Thoroughly enjoyable. Like honestly, it wasn't obviously great pipe, uh, like we would want, but it's still a very rippable wave. It's a great wave in the conditions that it ran in. And I just had the thought that, yeah, we want great pipe, but this is still better than Abu Dhabi's going to be. This is still better than probably three or four other spots on tour. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. The broadcast was excellent. Like camera angles, all that stuff, obviously they've got dialed, but commentary seemed excited and vibrant and thrilled to be back. There was all these new stats that they were providing of really detailed stuff, like how many waves a given surfer has ridden in their WSL career, how many of those waves were over a certain score, which ones were rights, which ones were left. So I don't know who's doing all that calculation now,
AI.
but it was, yeah, AI is doing it, but it was very insightful and helpful and just kept things kind of going in the commentary booth. Um, there was a couple of really good surfing. I mean, there was in really, really great surfing almost across the board, even though it wasn't getting spit out of barrels, it was still really high performance ripping. And then I had one really shocking thought, Scott, which
Yes.
is Felipe Toledo could be our 2025 Pipe Pro champion.
Wow. What do you want me to say? I'm not here to beat up on Felipe Toledo. I want good things for Felipe Toledo, but
That would be a shocker. That would be a surprise if on his list of accolades under his world titles, he has the pipe champ, not pipe master, but pipe pro champion.
yeah,
And because in his heat, he's ripping. I mean, he's head and shoulders above 9 out of 10 of the other competitors. There's a
yeah,
couple guys who can go toe to toe to them, but in these conditions, Felipe could have a pipe title.
yeah. Well, we'll see. I don't know what it's going to do. Backdoor, 8 to 10 feet on Friday. You know, there's still a lot of surfing to be done here in this contest. We'll see what happens, but that would not surprise me if it's 4 to 6 foot backdoor pipe.
No. But in the history books, he'll be associated with pipe. So that's kind of an interesting detail.
There's a
Um,
few guys that have pipe victories that where it was shitty. I think Robbie Page won it like at Aokai Beach Park one time, and I
beat
believe
Durbich.
I think Damien, no, Hardman, yeah, Damien Hardman, maybe. I don't know. I'm not an expert on all this stuff, but I know that there's been some shitty events, you know.
And you don't remember the quality of the waves. You just remember Robbie Page was a pipe master.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Did Taj win it one time? Like,
I don't remember that. I remember
yeah,
B. Durbich did for sure.
yeah.
Um, your boy Kelly Slater, your survival pick, Kelly Slater made it through his heat, not through the round of 32 yet, but into the
Oh,
round of 32.
yeah. I watched one of his waves actually, so he looked good.
Yeah, great to see him. The only rookie that made it out of their heat won their heat was Marco Mignot, who you and I didn't even discuss in the lead up to this season, but that was pretty incredible to watch. Big air into the flats for the
You
win.
know what? You know what this season needs? It needs a one or two newcomers to just mow down fields and have us be excited. Kind of
Yeah,
the way we were excited about what's his name during the COVID year. What was that Australian guy that kind of had a run?
Matt
And
Banting.
no, in really crappy waves
Oh,
during the
Morgan
COVID year.
Siblick.
Yeah, Siblick. We need a fresh face to just kind of mow some people down and create a narrative and a storyline for us. And that
Man, more
person's Alan Cleland Jr.
not yet.
Not
He had
yet.
his opportunity. He's not there yet. Marco,
Yeah.
though, stood up to the challenge. But you're right. The Morgan Siblick years, man, how thrilling was that? Like, he really had a moment. He had a year. He had that film. He was killing it in the contest, taking out big names. And then the following year, couldn't requalify.
That really speaks to, I think, the level between champions, CS surfers and CT surfers and QS surfers.
It does, although I would still make the argument he's a CT quality surfer. His surfing is unbelievable, but maybe not the competitive. I mean, something got in his head, I think, coming in through the sophomore year where he was just out of sorts.
Yeah, I'm not sure why either. He's definitely a great surfer, but it's like all athletes. It comes down to the mental game. They all have the ability.
Yeah.
They have the mental game.
So the mental game translates to consistency, is what it ultimately comes down to. So if Morgan Siblick could continue to do what he was doing without letting anything get in his head and distract him, it's undeniable. But
Yeah.
self-doubt creeps in ultimately. It's a really interesting thing. Anyways, pipe will end before you and I record again. And believe it or not, Abu Dhabi is right around the corner. Abu Dhabi actually kicks off on February 14th. So
Wow.
next Friday, maybe next Thursday, next Friday for us in the US. but you want to lock in your survival pick before that event starts. So this is your
Oh,
warning, everybody who's participating in Survival League. Get your picks, get them all on pencil this week, and then once pipe ends, mark it in pen and make your submission on Survival League. You writing
do
down?
it. I'm actually trying to figure out how long it takes to fly from Hawaii to the United Arab Emirates, Dubai.
Hmm.
17 hours it takes.
All right.
Basically 18 hours to fly from Hawaii to Dubai.
So as soon as you lose your heat, go and get some waves in the pool. Acclimate.
Talk about a culture shock. That's because are there two different places in the world than the North Shore of Oahu and Abu Dhabi?
It's as different as it comes.
Yeah,
Well, I
interesting.
do want to state little note about Jagger Bartholomew. Did you see this news?
I did see something about it. Is he in the? He has a health scare or something.
Yeah, he's in the hospital. So Wayne Rabbit Bartholomew's son, Jagger, who's a really great surfer, super fit, active, um, contracted a really unfortunate issue. It's called nervous intermedius neuralgia, and it's basically a blood vessel, usually an artery, that presses against the nervus intermedius nerve at the entry point to the brainstem, and it causes irritation and pain. But the symptoms are 24/7 excruciating pain just from
Oh
this little
God.
nerve that gets pinched from a blood vessel. And I looked into what the potential causes for it could be because nothing is stated in their posts about this. Um, and I don't know. Like the medical community doesn't seem to have a really strong grasp on what causes this. They know that like excessive use of your jaw, maybe from chewing or something like that, can irritate it, but they don't necessarily know what the initial um, problem is in the blood vessel that creates it or presses it up against that nerve. But ultimately, in their Instagram and GoFundMe, they said that it features excruciating pain. All nerves on the left side of his skull, neck, and jaw and the vertebrae torture Jagger with lightning-like attacks, stabbing in his different directions throughout his body. Jagger's been left completely debilitated over the past 7 weeks, and for the past month, he's been admitted full-time to the Gold Coast Hospital, where he's under the expert care of an acute pain team and neurologist who are working tirelessly to manage the condition and provide some relief from the unrelenting pain. Sounds
Wow.
terrible. I can't imagine um, having a kid who's in that condition and not being able to really do
Oh
much.
my God, that's horrible. I'm so sorry. And yeah, it's just those of us that have children, you think about, oh my God, if that was my kid and he was in constant stabbing pain in his brain, it'd just be horrific. So I don't know, is there a GoFundMe page for this or what's going on
Yeah.
here?
Yeah. One of Jagger's friends put together the GoFundMe with all the information. Sean Thompson's actually the top donor at the moment, but I'll link to it in today's show notes if you want to go to it and support the cause.
That's horrible. Yes, do it. Do it. Let's all support Jagger. Let's hopefully he finds some relief.
I know. Totally interesting disease I'd never heard of or a condition I've never heard of. Also, I wanted to make a note just for listeners in LA, in the LA area. Surfrider a couple of days ago posted about the wildfires and how those are affecting the wildfires in Los Angeles and how those have affected the water quality for the surf community in Los Angeles. They basically pointed attention to two things to be aware of: fire debris runoff. So the LA County Department of Public Health has issued ocean water closure for two stretches of coastline from Surfrider Beach to Las Flores State Beach, and then Santa Monica State Beach to Dockweiler, due to hazardous ash and fire debris in the water. They pose serious risk to human health. Obviously, we don't even know what's in that runoff because it's all just waste from the fires. And then there's also a rain advisory due to elevated bacteria levels related to all of this. So there's no need to be ignorant. Lots of times, maybe you and I have even had conversations here, just like, do you go surfing after a rain? We're like, yeah, who cares? I'm going to go risk it. You don't need to be ignorant. Surfrider is collecting this data and making it available to you and giving you recommendations and guidelines. So if you want to stay informed, go to surfrider.org, certainly for LA, but also for any other part of the country that you live in, and consider becoming a member as well to support the cause and support these efforts at Surfrider.
Look how cool my background is.
Scott
It used to not be
redecorated.
cool. My wife's like, you got to do something about your background. So my wife curated this background. She put the little guitars there and the poster, and every background needs a bookshelf, right?
Well,
A
clearly
little,
you do because you actually read books, so it's not just for show.
oh my God, On Desperate Ground by Hampton Sides, the Korean War. Pretty gnarly. MacArthur screwed up, man. Well, look, David, uh,
I
you
got a
should
must.
read. I need you to read The Knicks, this great book that I told you about. You'd really, really enjoy it. Like, it's a fun read that you'd be like, oh, Scott was right. I'm so glad I read this book. And if you don't like it, put it down. Don't read it, but give it, 3 pages and you'll be like, oh, this is really good.
That's all it takes. 3 pages.
One, one, one paragraph.
Impressive. Wow.
I mean, I don't know.
I'll look into it. I'll add it to the top of my list.
Nice. Well,
Um,
look,
I,
yeah.
I've got a must see moment.
Oh, good.
Must see moment presented by Trees Wax, petroleum free surf wax, high performance, uh, made from plants, trees, and rocks. Pretty
Great.
incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go to treeswax.com or your local retailer. But my must see moment is Rasta, Dave Rostovich on the Yin Yang by Nathan Oldfield.
That's my must-see moment.
How could it not be? I mean, we had the benefit of seeing Rasta through the electric acid surfboard test in 2024. We got more Rasta than we've gotten in a long time. But he's also been consistently filming with Nathan Oldfield for a long time now, years. And basically, this footage was provided with commentary from Eden Saul of Dead Kooks. And Eden said, the clip is more of a collection of footage that we've had lying around for the past year or so. It focuses on one specific board model, the Yin Yang. Dave is riding a 6.3 and a 6.5. Nathan Oldfield shot and edited the clip. It's just bits and pieces that we've had stored and all the hype around the electric acid surfboard stuff. I figured people might want to see this. Dave tends to keep his footage pretty under wraps, so it felt like the right time to do something together for people to check out. When I started making mid-length surfboards, they were far from the mainstream in Australia. A small group of us were working on fish, longboards, and mid-lengths, but it was very niche market. I was late to the game, to be honest, but it was something I was passionate about. And over the last 10 to 12 years, tastes have certainly shifted, and these designs have become far more of the norm. Having spent years working on them, we're in a nice spot now. We've had that experience and the pains that come with it. End quote.
That's cool. I'm going to check that out. It made me think, when you think about Nat Young and Wayne Lynch in 1975, like, everyone was riding mid lengths. That's what
Yeah.
you rode. You rode 7.2s, you rode 6.8s. That's what they were riding. And everything's full circle. And here we are. And people realize foam is your friend, man.
Well, I wanted to highlight that piece because I have gotten a 6.6 yin yang from Dead Kooks from Eden Sol. And it's my favorite board that I've had in years, believe it or not.
I'd believe it. You know,
I'm bringing it to El Salvador.
heck yes. I'm going
That's
to
number
ride it.
one. Yeah, that's number one on my list. It'll suit you well, actually. The size is perfect for you.
Yeah.
But what I love about it is it's so easy to ride and it's so versatile. Like again, it's 6.6, so there's plenty of foam, but it's got spice in it. Like the tail is very narrow and thin, really foiled out, and so you can turn it. But if you watch the, I mean, really, all you want to do is watch the Dave Rostovich footage that we're talking about, and that illustrates how you should surf it. You can take beautiful lines, go anywhere you want to go. You don't want to go over above the lip. You're not even trying to go above the lip, but you can go anywhere on the wave and it gets you there quick and stylishly because it is a longer rail and it has more volume.
Well, I look forward to trying it. Are you bringing more than one board?
Probably, yeah.
Uh,
I haven't really thought about, mapped it out, but I do know that's coming with me.
I'm just bringing one board.
I know you're hardcore that way.
No, it's just, there'll be other boards I can ride there.
Yeah. No, yeah, mine.
You know what happens when you borrow a board and you love it? It's the worst. You're like, dude, I'll give you $600 for this board. Okay, 800. I'll give you
Yeah.
$1,000 for this board.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is that clip, by the way, you can find it on YouTube. I want to say Stab Magazine's YouTube channel might have posted it, but again, Nathan
It is.
Oldfield's
It's on
clip.
Stab. It's on
Okay.
Stab. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's Nathan Oldfield's clip, but they're the ones publishing it. But I'll link to it again in the show notes. So thank you to Treeswax for that. And then in regard to of our El Salvador trip, if you want to come, I don't know how many spots are left, but inquire if you're interested. El Salvador is April 1st through the 7th. Scott and I will be there. We're doing a listener trip, taking over Hotel Los Mangos for 6 nights. And then also Chicama, Peru in August 27th through September 3rd. It's a 7-night trip. And if you want price and details, email me surfsplendor@gmail.com.
Unreal. David, it's been a great show. We've said a lot. Lots been done. Lots been said. Until next time, adios and aloha.
Scott, we don't hit it often enough, but drinkag1.com/surf is it's a part of my daily life. It's a part of my health and well-being. It's a hack.
It is, it's essential vitamins and minerals and probiotics and things that you need for a healthy life, especially during these winter months when there's a flu and a cold and some bugs floating around. Drink your AG1, get a little bit of green in your life. It's a no-brainer. And so David and I urge you to do what we do, which is, AG1 is in my refrigerator. It's a go-to, and I'm a big, big fan.
I'm a big fan of simplicity and efficiency, and it happens to just work for me. I'm not a nutritionist, so I don't fully understand what people need in their bodies, but go research it on your own. Go to drinkag1.com/surf and you can read up on exactly what is in it and vet it for yourself. And then there's a 90-day money back guarantee. So if you do get it and you don't see the benefit at day 89, they will give you your money back. So no reason not to try drinkag1.com/surf.